I'd like to thank the organizers and thank you for giving me this opportunity to carry out my ministry. This is my ministry. It's what I do. When God was passing out gifts, I didn't get the gift to be a great spiritual leader, although one time I thought I had. I didn't get the gift to be a great corporate leader. I got the gift to crunch numbers. Now, frankly, it's not a gift a lot of folks are standing in line to get. That's the gift I have. If I'm going to use my gift to glorify God, use my gift for stewardship, I need forums like this, where I can show you the numbers I've crunched, give you my interpretation, and hear your interpretation, so we all leave here in a better position to help out the church that we all love. Now, for many of you, this is not your first rodeo. You've been doing stewardship of your parish for a long time, and you certainly have some stories, some examples. So if during my presentation you have a story or an example that supports what I'm saying, please share it with the rest of the group. Same time, if you have a story or an example that contradicts what I'm saying, keep it to yourself. Now, I'd like to share both the good news and the bad news, okay? Those of you who are about my age, those of us in our late 20s, early 30s, might remember a movie from the 60s, The Graduate, okay, Dustin Hoffman. Even if you're younger than that, you've seen it on late night TV probably more than once. If you recall, the movie opens with Ben, played by Dustin Hoffman's graduation party. He's up in his room, he's kind of in a sour mood, he's not happy about graduating. At some point, his father comes upstairs and drags him down to the party. And the first person he encounters is one of his father's friends, obviously a very successful business person. And the guy says to Ben, "Come here, Ben, I want to talk to you." So he pulls Ben off to one side and says, "Ben, I've got one word for you." So here I was, back in the 60s, a college student, and here's this titan of industry, this very successful business person going to give the one word for success. Says to Ben, the one word is plastics. Were you as disappointed as I was? I'm not saying about plastics. Come on, give me a break. Anyway, I got one word for you today for successful stewardship in your parish. So the one word for success is permeate. If you want stewardship to take hold in your parish to be successful, it has to permeate the entire parish. Every ministry has to understand their role in promoting stewardship in your parish. It'll probably start in your parish with a small group of folks who are really dedicated, hopefully including the pastor. But if it stays within that group, it'll never be a success. You really need to have everybody on board. So you have to start working from day one, getting everybody on board for stewardship. Okay? Now, in my presentation today, I'm going to show you a result from a couple of studies I did. The first one where we surveyed actual parishioners and got their impressions of stewardship, and the other one would be where we surveyed parishes themselves, pastors. I'm going to do this in the form of a little exam. There's a Villanova, we're approaching final exams, next month is final exams. So I thought I'd give you an exam. And I've been told by the organizing committee there's a prize for the best score on the exam. 1 week vacation in Philadelphia, where I'm from. Yeah. Second prize is 2 weeks in Philadelphia. Maybe you come out there in the fall when we can watch the Phillies play the Twins in the World Series. All right, that'll happen, huh? Okay. Anyway, so keep track of your score because nobody else will. So, first question. Beep. True or false? While no church is entirely satisfied with the amount that their members contribute, Catholics contribute to their parish at about the same rate as Protestants. True or false? Beep. Now, I'm sure you can see this in your handout real well, can't you? Huh? I've seen your handout. If you can see this, your eyes are better than mine. Where are the Catholics? I'm not tall enough to show you where the Catholics are. We're third from the top. We're third from the top. Catholics are really low givers compared to Protestants. In fact, the national average is that Catholics give about half as much to their church as Protestants do. Typical Catholic household gives about 1.1% of their income to their church. Typical Protestant household, more like 2.4, 2.5%, about half. What's this mean? It means that if Catholics gave at just the same rate as Protestants, the same 2.4, 2.5%, I'm not talking about tithing here, the same 2.4, 2.5%, the church would raise another $7 billion a year. What can we do with another $7 billion a year? Think of all the community outreach we could be doing that we're not doing now because we can't afford it. Think of the deferred maintenance that we're putting aside because we can't afford it. Think of the scandalously low salaries we pay our church workers, including our parochial school teachers. Another $7 billion a year. Put another way, if folks in your parish, if they're typical, giving the same 1.1%, if they gave the same rate as Protestants, your parish income would double. It would double every year. That's what's at stake here. In fact, there are such low givers compared to Protestants. And there's no reason why that should be the case. Beep. True or false? Catholics who attend Mass more often contribute more to their parish. Beep. The answer is true, but. Yeah, if you look at the Catholics are in yellow, Protestants there, and what's that, like a burnt orange? And it's true. As Catholic Mass attendance patterns increase, they give more to their church. But so do Protestants. In fact, you'll notice as church attendance increases, the gap between the two gets bigger. The biggest gap between Catholic and Protestant giving is among those who attend church weekly. Now I'm going to show you some slides here today that are of concern to me. This one frankly scares me. This scares me. How can it be that our folks are in church every Sunday, hearing our message every Sunday, still give less than half as much as Protestants do? I can understand the folks who are never there, the one on the far left. I can understand the low givers, okay. But I don't understand how we're missing the boat with those that are there every Sunday. That's we have to work on that. Beep. Question 3. Catholics who disagree with official church teachings on sexual ethics issues such as birth control, divorce, ordination of women, contribute less to their parish than do those Catholics who agree with the church's teachings on each of these topics. True or false? Back in the 1980s, Father Andrew Greeley, sociologist from the University of Chicago, was the first one to recognize this big gap between Catholic and Protestant giving. In fact, the Protestants give twice as much as Catholics. And he said there's one reason why Catholics are low givers. Because they're disaffected with the hierarchy over these sexual ethics issues. And folks sort of scratch their heads and say, oh, gee, Father, these are real important issues, don't get me wrong. These are real important issues. But that's the one reason? Father Greeley says, yep. Father Greeley has a sort of in-your-face attitude. And he said, you don't like my findings? Collect your own data. Prove me wrong. Well, we collected our own data. Father Greeley, you're wrong. Turns out that Catholics who agree with the church on each of these issues give no more nor no less than those who disagree. These are real critical issues to the life of the church, don't get me wrong. When it comes to the giving decision, Catholics who agree give no more nor no less than those who disagree. Frankly, that surprised me. I really thought I would find something here. It surprised me. There's some other findings that surprised me as well. Homilies don't make a difference. Folks who like their priest's homilies give no more nor no less than those who don't like their priest's homilies. So all you guys with Roman collars, breathe a little bit easier today. I'm sure you find that hard to believe, but that's what the numbers show us. Homilies are important, but they're not an issue when it comes to giving. What's another one? Liturgies. Folks who like their parish liturgies give no more nor no less than those who don't. Folks who want, for example, Latin Mass. Give no more nor no less than my 95-year-old mother who likes a polka Mass. Right? You all ever do a polka Mass? Hymns are sung to a beat of a polka. Roll out the gospel. It's not an issue. That surprised me. Another one, people who give more to other causes. We heard this a lot in our focus groups. Folks would say, well, yeah, okay, maybe Catholics give less to their parish than do than Protestants. But we're really very generous people, and we give to a lot of other causes. Every month, the U.S. Conference of Bishops has a second collection we have to contribute to. We have our Catholic Charities. Some of us went to Catholic colleges that we support. We give to secular cause like United Way. So we're really very generous people. You know what? Protestants are very generous people too. They give to other causes. Across both Catholics and Protestants, those who give more to other causes also give more to their church. There's sort of this urban legend that there's a trade-off there. You don't give more to other causes, less to your church. No. Those who give more to other causes also give more to their church. That surprised me. That was a finding. Beep. Question 4. Parish that preach a stewardship message receive larger contributions from their members. True or false? Would I be here otherwise? Beep. Here's some sayings that I've collected describe stewardship. There's a lot more, but all we have is really a gift from God who asks us to return a portion of the form of our time, talent, and treasure to support his work on earth. Developing a need to give rather than giving to a need, as Father Gerd told us last session. Stewardship is an understanding of a total way of life, a conversion of mind and heart. Stewardship is not about something we do, it's about who we are and whose we are. It's about asking ourselves, what do we own and what owns us? Now, they're all really good. My favorite, though, is that the second one, develop a need to give rather than giving to a need. How many appeals have you heard in your parish where the purpose of the appeal was, we got bills coming up, we need your money, give to a need? Consumerist. Okay? How often have you heard your priest say, I'm going to help you develop a need to give, as Father Gerd told us last session? That's stewardship. Beep. So here's what we found out. Yeah, parishes that use a stewardship approach, folks give more than those that don't. Surprise, surprise. It works. But you know what? Stewardship is that we should be doing anyway. Even if we were flush with cash, we had more money we could possibly spend, we should still be promoting stewardship in our parishes. It's about who we are. It's about what we as Christians should be doing. And it happens to also work financially. Beep. Question 5, true or false? Parishioners who plan their giving in advance contribute more to their parish than those who decide weekly how much to contribute. True or false? Sure. Beep. This is what we found out. Here's another scary statistic. 38% of our weekly Mass attenders, this is not the folks who never show up, these are the weekly Mass attenders, 38% base their giving decision on what's in their checkbook that week. If there's more in their checkbook, they'll give more. If there's less in their checkbook, they'll give less. If they're not there that Sunday because they're on vacation or sick, whatever, they won't make it up. I know what that's like. That used to be me. 38% of our regular Mass attenders, we have to change that. Another group gives a weekly dollar amount. I'll give $20 a week. Okay, that's better. But too often that $20 a week stays the same $20 week after week after week, year after year after year, forgetting that maybe our ability to contribute has gone up during that period. and forgetting that the church's expenses have gone up. And again, frequently the person who gives a weekly amount, if they miss Mass in a week, they may not make it up. Others give an annual dollar amount. I'll give $1,000 this month, or this year rather. Okay? And that's even better. But again, that $1,000 might stay the same year after year after year as circumstances change. Others give an annual income percent. To me, that's even better. Very few Catholics tithe. 4% told us that they tithe. And you can see tithing doesn't mean the same thing to them as it does to most folks, because clearly when they tithe, they're not giving 10% of their income. I'm going to speak some heresy here. Is the bishop gone? Archbishop gone? Okay. I'm not a big fan of promoting tithing among Catholics for a couple of reasons. One, tithing tends to only talk about money. 10% of your income. Or some folks say 5% to the church and 5% to other causes or whatever. But more importantly, so often I've seen speakers speak on tithing, give 10% of your income to the church. I looked at the crowd, I've seen their faces glaze over. Because what they're thinking is, I'm a normal Catholic. I give 1.1% of my income to the church. And now you're telling me I should be giving 10%? I can't relate to that. Okay? So the message goes nowhere. You probably say to me, Chuck, you're so smart. What would you say? If someone asked me, I'd say, well, listen, if you're probably a normal Catholic, you about 1% of your income right now, can you increase it by 0.5%? Can you do that? Maybe next year give 1.5%. And how about the year after that, another 0.5%, make it up to 2%? Can you do that, do you think? Most folks say, well, yeah, I can do that. Move up in steps. So you're probably saying, oh, geez, Chuck, isn't that just a backdoor way of getting to tithing? Well, sure it is. But it's a way that folks can relate to. They can't relate going from 1% to 10%, but they can relate going there in steps. And that's how we should be helping them. Because I found out most folks want to be more generous. If you ask folks, they really would like to be better stewards. But it's hard. They've got all these bills and everything else. And we don't have a tradition in the Catholic Church of giving. We have to do everything we can to help make it easy for them. And that's one way. I'm not a big fan of tithing. I'm a big fan of pledging. That's one big difference between us and Protestants. They pledge, we tend not to. We need to have our Catholics make a commitment to the church by pledging. Now, pledging is not a popular notion among Catholics. I was in one focus group once where I raised the issue of pledging, and one woman said, Pledging? That's a stupid Protestant idea. Like stupid Protestant is one word. That's a stupid Protestant idea. Another woman says, Pledging? You want me to commit to the church for a whole year? I'm saying, what? People will go out and buy a new car and get a 5-year car payment without thinking about it. They'll buy a vacation home and get a mortgage, but they're concerned when I ask them to pledge for 1 year. I remember thinking when that woman said that, I said to myself, what do you own and what owns you? I would have kept my mouth shut. Okay? A lot of folks have different reasons for not wanting to pledge. Like some folks say, I don't want the pastor to know what I'm giving. What would the pastor think? Okay? Other folks say, well, it's nobody's business what I give. But there are a lot of really very good ways to pledge. There's a parish near my home where they pledge. They have a pledge sheet. And the pledge sheet has a tear-off. And on one side, they give their name, the other side, the amount that they're going to pledge. And on Pledge Sunday, they have a procession. Folks come up the aisle. There's 2 baskets on the steps. They tear their pledge sheet apart. One side, they put their name. The other side, they put the dollar amount. So that the parish knows who pledged, they know how much, but no one can compare the two, which really helps the parish budget. They know how much is to happen. Another parish near my house, again, Pledge Sunday, they have a procession, folks come up, drop their pledge sheet in the basket. When that's all done, the pastor walks out, starts a fire, pours the pledge sheets on the fire. The idea being your pledge is between you and God. The point is, we really have to do that. I mean, that's one thing we really have to get people in the mind that, we have to make a commitment to our church. This is important enough that we should be able to make a commitment to our church, not be afraid to tell folks about it. One of the best ways of doing this in my mind, beep, yeah, okay, that was it. Okay, that's the one, yeah. So it works. One of the best ways of doing this is through electronic giving. Anybody here at Parish do electronic giving? Yeah, that's a great idea. First of all, it works. My studies show that when folks start giving electronically, their contributions increase by 30%. Because, of course, they're giving when they're not there and giving more. And most importantly, they're giving at the beginning of the month. One of the tenets of stewardship is first fruits. We should give God our first fruits. Well, folks who give electronically find the money's taken out of their checking account the first of the month. Okay? It really works. Now, I know some folks don't like the idea. I know I've talked to some priests that say, well, gee, Chuck, if I give electronically, that sort of spoils the offertory, right? That's an important part of our liturgy. Well, it doesn't have to. Most envelope companies, like our Sunday Visitor, the biggest envelope company, when they print their envelopes on the outside, they have a box for, I have given electronically. So during the offertory, when the basket's passed around, folks drop their envelope in. Some envelopes contain cash, some contain checks, some are empty. The person just checked on the outside, they've given electronically. They participate in the offertory. In fact, I've told that some folks give electronically also throw a few extra bucks in when they pass their envelope in. So there's some really good ways of doing that. That's another thing we should be pursuing. Now, of course, folks have different motivations for giving electronically. I have a good friend who gives electronically by having the money taken out of his credit card because he gets airline miles. Okay. You just have to meet folks where they're at. But this is something I would encourage every parish to do. Consider electronic giving. Beep. Question 6, true or false? Parishioners who believe that they have an input into parish decision-making contribute more to their parish. True or false? True. Okay, beep. This is another way in which we differ from Protestants who typically have more of an input in their parish life. Back in the pre-Vatican Council II church that I was raised in, decision-making was pretty easy in the parish. It was the pastor. The pastor was the pope of the parish. The rest of us were told to pray, pay, and obey. And then along came Vatican II, and the motto was we were supposed to collaborate. Priests and lay people collaborate. Well, in the last few years of his tenure as Pope, Pope Benedict brought in a new model. He talked about co-responsibility. He said the laity are co-responsible with the priests, with the clergy, for the life of the parish, which means that we should be consulted. Now, canon law is pretty clear. The final decision lies with the pastor. But parishioners like to be consulted. So the more we get parishioners involved in decision-making, the more they're likely to contribute. I know a lot of Protestant churches have town hall meetings, for example, where they discuss the budget, and folks are allowed to comment on the preliminary budget, and then the final budget is put together. I don't know of a single Catholic parish that does that. We need to get our folks involved in a consultative role in parish life, because once they do, they give more. Now, not all decisions are made through a consultative process. I had a former pastor a few years ago that decided one year that the church building needed new doors. So without asking anybody, he went out and bought some new doors for the church building. These are nice doors. It cost him $38,000. I wasn't happy. So I went to him and said, gee, Father Joe, do you know how much $38,000 is? He said, well, blah, blah, blah. I said, no, Father. Do you know how much $38,000 is? Most of your parishioners, based as 1% of their income thing, most of your parishioners won't give $20,000 to this parish in their lifetime. said, Father, you just took two of your parishioners' lifetime contributions. You didn't spend it to upgrade the facilities in any meaningful way. You didn't use it for outreach. You used it to buy doors. And you didn't ask anybody. I said, Father, you want a guy like me to give more money to this church? That's how you're going to spend it? Let's be really clear. We have to model good stewardship for our parishioners. I mean, what kind of credibility does that pastor have next time he stands in the pulpit and talks about good stewardship? He doesn't. We have to be very careful to model good stewardship, be accountable in all our finances, be transparent in all our finances, and get folks involved in good decision making. Because unless folks see that in the parish house, they're not going to be impressed. Now, sometimes that my former pastor, to give him his due, could be very shrewd. A few years after that episode, we had to put an addition on the parochial school. And the good news, the parochial school is growing, got to put an addition on. So we did. You know, things happen, and there was like a cost overrun. It was $48,000. So one day the pastor, after communion, came in and announced that there's a cost overrun on the construction of the school. We have to come up with another $48,000, folks. Well, that week, a parishioner stepped forward and wrote a check for $48,000. Interesting story, that guy. He was the parishioner, he was a convert, actually a recent convert. In fact, the sequence went, he went through our RCIA program, was baptized in April, Holy Saturday. In May, the pastor made this request, the guy wrote the check. And in June, the pastor appointed him to the pastoral council. The folks said, wait a minute, this guy's been a Catholic for 6 weeks? The pastor sold a seat on the pastoral council. So I don't know how many of you serve on your pastoral councils, or what you think it's worth. In Philadelphia Archdiocese, it's apparently worth $48,000. Again, why would you do that? Come on, where's your credibility? You know, we got to be really careful about that because people notice that kind of stuff. Believe me, I do. Okay, what's been wrong with my presentation so far? A lot of things I know, but what's the biggest problem? I've only talked about money, right? The whole discussion has been in terms of money. We all know stewardship is far more than money. It's time, talent, and treasure. But money is the easiest thing to measure. So finally, I got together with some of my friends from the International Catholic Stewardship Conference. Okay. And I said, we got to do something about this. So we got a grant from our Sunday Visitor Institute to look at a bigger picture of stewardship. And so we surveyed parishes. Again, the first half was we surveyed parishioners. The second half of my talk from surveys of parishes. Beep. And here's the values that we come up with. We asked the parish, what is the average household giving in your parish? This is really the crudest measure you can imagine. How much contribution do you have divided by the number of households? It's as crude as you can get, but that's the best we could do. We asked the pastor, but how many folks, what percent of your folks volunteer? He's a little over a quarter. And then we really want to get some measure of the spiritual impact of stewardship, a spirituality measure. So we asked the pastor about what percent of your folks regularly attend weekday Mass? How about other liturgical celebrations? How many attend Bible study groups? How about small group retreats? How many are members of small faith groups? We just took those percentages and added them up, came up with what, 46%? That's really crude for a lot of reasons. One of which is a lot of folks that do more than one of those. So they're counted more than once. A lot of folks do all of them. A lot of folks in this building do all of them. They'd be counted 5 times. We call it double counting. Not ideal, but it's the best we could do. It also misses a lot of things. For example, it misses personal prayer. We didn't get a measure of that, which should be in there. So I'm not going to tell you this is the best measure ever, but it's the first and only attempt anybody's ever made to compare the spiritual side of stewardship with different spiritual activities, different stewardship activities, excuse me. So what I'm going to do now is show you some slides with some numbers on, like 10%, 20%. What those numbers show is how much of an increase in each of these parishes received when they did that particular activity. So for example, if you see a 10% for treasure, parishes that did that particular activity received 10% more treasure than parishes that don't. Or if you see 20% by volunteers, parishes that did that activity received 20% more volunteer time than those that didn't. Okay? So you understand what those numbers mean? 0% means there's no difference between parishes that did that activity and those that didn't. Beep. So question 7, true or false? Parish with stewardship councils achieve better stewardship results than parish without stewardship councils. Beep. What do we find out? Parishes that have a specific stewardship council receive 12% more treasure than those that didn't. They receive 7% more volunteer time than those that didn't. 0% on our spiritual measure. What this tells me is that folks who serve on stewardship councils understand their role is to help raise treasure. They understand their role is to help raise volunteer time. They don't understand their role is also to enhance spirituality in the parish. If you're on your parish's stewardship council, you have a responsibility to make sure your parish is also a more spiritual place. It's not just the money, it's not just the volunteer time, but you should also be working on making your parish a more spiritual place, because that's part of your role. So how should the stewardship council be organized? I really favor a separate stewardship council. I know this is not canonically correct, but I'll say it anyways. A stewardship council on the same level as the parish finance council and the parish pastoral council. The three should be equal in my mind if stewardship is going to work in your parish. Now, a lot of parishes I know have a stewardship council, but they make it a committee of the finance council. That's a terrible idea. The reason is because it sends a message to parishioners, stewardship is only about the money, which most folks think anyways. They think stewardship is just a euphemism for fundraising. So if you're going to have a stewardship council, don't make it a committee of your finance council. Others have it a committee of the pastoral council. Okay, I can see that. That makes some sense. I wouldn't object to that. But in my mind, better is to have it on the same level as the pastoral and finance council. Give it the same stature in the parish as those other two very important councils. Beep. Question 8. Which of the following parish stewardship activities is most effective? Frequent homilies on stewardship, a parish ministry fair, including stewardship as a part of the parish plan. There. Do you have the answers in front of you? Sure you do. All right, beep. Let's look at homilies. Parishes where the priests give frequent homilies on stewardship receive 15% more volunteer time, 12% more of our spirituality measure, 0% treasure. There's this guy, Dan Conway, a well-known author, who wrote a book called The Reluctant Steward. We talked about the role that priests play. He says it's really tough for priests to talk about the treasure component. It's really tough. Because one, they live a celibate lifestyle. They don't have the same expenses that the married families do. And they, frankly, a lot of priests feel they don't have the credibility to talk about money that they would like to. Secondly, seminaries do an awful job of training their guys to talk about stewardship. Okay? And thirdly, no priest wants to hear all you ever do is talk about money. Right? You have one stewardship sermon a year, and at the end people say, "You're always beating us up about money, aren't you?" But you know what? You have to. You have to. If you're a priest, you have to talk about money. You have to talk about treasure. You have to help a guy like me understand the role of money and possessions in my life. Okay? As you may know, of the parables Jesus spoke, more than half deal with money and possessions. More than half. Because Jesus knew that money and possessions were a far greater threat to our eternal life than anything else, including a lack of love. So if you're a priest, you have to talk about the treasure component. So I'm not saying here, don't talk about treasure. What I'm saying is, don't have high expectations. I've heard of a lot of parishes that are in financial difficulty. They say, boy, how can we get out of this? Oh, I know. We'll have a father give a series of homilies on stewardship. That'll raise a lot of money. Probably won't. You'll be disappointed. Okay? So again, we have to have our priests talk about all three components of stewardship, time, talent, and treasure. Just don't have high expectations for the results in treasure. How about a volunteer fair? How many here have a volunteer fair where at one point during the year you get all the ministries out and folks walk around and sign up? How successful is it? I didn't think so. Okay. Most volunteer fairs are not successful at all, and that's what my numbers show. Parish that had volunteer fairs, 0% treasure, 0% volunteer time, 40% spirituality. That's good. Why aren't volunteer fairs more successful? Well, one, I've heard time and time again a lack of follow-up. People say, I signed up for this ministry and nobody ever contacted me. It happens all the time. But the better reason is, why do folks volunteer? What's the one major reason why folks volunteer for anything? They were asked. They were asked. The major reason why folks volunteer is because they were asked. So a very passive event like a volunteer fair, where folks just walk around and other folks sit behind a table talking about their ministry, that's too passive. What you need is to get your ministries out there being proactive. Invite people to join the ministry. For example, someone might say, geez, Bob, you're at Mass early every Sunday, I've noticed. We could use some more ushers. How about joining the ushers, Bob? Have the ushers approach someone. Someone might say, gee, Mary, I heard you sing in church. You're a really nice singer. We could use some more canners, Mary. What about joining the canners? You should have your ministry leaders actively looking for new members. Because that's the way you get folks to volunteer their time, by being asked, not by some passive event like a volunteer fair. Parish plan, 18% more treasure, 19% more volunteer time, 50% more spirituality. Because you know what? If stewardship is part of your parish plan, it's going to permeate the entire parish. If you make it part of your parish plan, you're halfway there. Beep. Question 9, true or false? The use of lay witnesses is an effective parish stewardship activity. Beep. We make a great team, Mike. Really. We should take this show on the road. Huh? Be like Abbott Costello, Martin Lewis, Dumb and Dumber. We make a great team. Okay, lay witnesses, 11% more treasure, 9% more volunteer time, 11% more spirituality. Lay witnesses work. Having folks step up and tell about their journey is very effective. Who should serve as a lay witness in your parish? The older, more respected parishioners? How about the younger, more attractive parishioners? How about someone from the youth group? How about a guest lay witness outside the parish? The answer is yes, 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 and yes. If you have lay witnesses, you should mix and match. Don't use the same kind of person all the time, because they're only probably speaking to a segment of your parish. Have the older, more respected parishioners do a lay witness talk about their journey. Have a younger couple, more attractive couple who's struggling right now financially to get started. Talk about how they deal with stewardship. The youth talk about stewardship because they might not have a lot of money, but they have the time and talent to contribute. How do we capture that? And of course, it's nice to bring in some outside speakers once in a while to get a totally different perspective. If you have lay witnesses, make sure you train them. Don't just throw them to the wolves. Okay? I know a lot of dioceses, I'm not sure about the ones that you represent, a lot of dioceses have lay witness training sessions that they sponsor for those who would serve as lay witnesses in the parish. It works. Beep. Number 10, which of the following welcoming activities is most effective at building parish stewardship? Having greeters, some sort of welcome wagon where you visit new parishioners, or new member reception. This is what I call an unintentional stewardship activity. You should be doing this anyway. If your parish doesn't even care about stewardship, you should be a welcoming place, right? Good news is, it also impacts stewardship. Beep. Having greeters, a modest impact, but an impact nevertheless. A welcome wagon, visiting parishioners. Now, if I'm going to visit a new parishioner, I'm going to spend a lot of time talking about the ministry opportunities in my parish, the opportunity for volunteering. That's why it's that big jump, 18%. It's hard in that sort of visit for me to talk to them about my spiritual life. And God, I hope I don't talk about money first visit, huh? But a welcome wagon is a very effective approach on getting more volunteer time. A lot of parishes have what's called a new member reception. Maybe 4 times a year, every quarter, they have a reception for the new parishioners. And that's the time you can really talk about things like, begin ministry opportunities, spiritual life of the parish, and that's the time to start promoting treasure. Start talking about the need to give. Works, okay? So new member reception, at least it works for treasure and volunteer time, not so much for spirituality. But if you don't now, I would encourage you to think about some sort of new member reception, whether you have a welcome wagon approach or not, to bring folks together. We could really make an impact on them and talk about stewardship. Beep. We gave our folks a whole laundry list of welcoming activities. I just showed you 3 of them there. Those that did 4 or more received 38% more treasure. 4 or more, 23% more volunteer time. 4 or more, 26% more spirituality. So doing a variety of volunteer activities is really effective. Again, you have to make sure your parish is a welcoming place. Every parishioner should feel like they have responsibility to make others feel welcome. If your parish isn't a welcoming place, isn't a place where people want to be, don't bother stewardship. It's not going to work. It's not going to work. Because you know what? At the end of the day, people give to people. Fundraisers tell you that all the time. People give to people. You might be able to raise money for, the roof blew off the school, we have to raise money to replace the roof. You can probably do that once in a while. But for long-term, sustained giving, people give to people. And if they don't feel welcome in your parish, they're not going to give. Just 4 or more. Beep. Question 11. Which of the following community building activities is most effective at building parish stewardship? Won't you be surprised that it turns out to be number 1? I do some consulting, and so I did some consulting for my home archdiocese, the Archdiocese of Philadelphia. And a few years ago, we had each parish do a parish plan. And submitted to the archdiocese, and we looked them over. One of the elements was stewardship. What do you do about stewardship? The Philadelphia Archdiocese, 10% of the parishes told us our stewardship plan is to have bingo more often. That's Philadelphia. Okay. Beep. Aren't you disappointed? Beep. I'm sorry. Okay. So what do? Coffee and donuts. Okay, some modest success. Parish picnic. Potluck dinners. What do these all have in common? They mix and match parishioners who might not otherwise associate with each other. Okay? Now, I go down after my Mass at my church, and I usually see the same folks every Sunday, so that's not a big deal. But I go to a parish picnic, I'll see folks that I swear I've never seen before, and they've been in the parish for 20 years. Or I go to a potluck dinner, same thing. Anything you do to build community, because again, people give to people. Parish picnic, parish festival. Anybody here have a parish festival every year? Remember a few years ago, there was a pastor I knew who had a real good reputation as a stewardship pastor. And was assigned to a new parish. So after about a year, I went to visit him and say, gee, Father, how's it going here? How's the stewardship going here? He says, well, Chuck, as you know, it takes a while to get stewardship started. This parish has no history of stewardship. It's taken a while to get it started, but we're on our way. So I had one tough decision, and right away, they had this parish festival every year. And they used it, and it's sort of a fundraising thing. So I had to cancel the parish festival. He said, because parish festivals are not stewardship. Raising money that way is not stewardship, so I just canceled it. I said, wow, that was really smart. Good going. I'm surprised you thought of that. That was good. As I'm driving home and saying, wait a minute, that was stupid. That's about the dumbest thing you can do. What better way to build community than with a parish picnic or a parish festival? We had all kinds of folks from all elements of the parish involved working together. A few years after that, I was at one of the ICSC conferences, and I was having lunch with some folks from a parish in Florida. I didn't ask how large the parish was. I think it's fairly large. Anyways, we're talking. We just got around to a parish festival. I said, oh, yeah, we have a parish festival. Last year, we had 1,000 people involved. I said, you had 1,000 people involved in your parish festival? Wow. Did you raise any money? I said, well, yeah, we raised $90,000. But we had 1,000 people involved. See, they had it right. What parish couldn't use $90,000? For them, that was secondary. That was like an afterthought. The fact that 1,000 people involved. Now, some of those were probably doing some long-term planning for the event. Others showed up maybe for an hour to man a booth or maybe clean up a little bit afterwards. But they were involved in their parish life. And that's so important to build community. Beep. We asked our folks, we gave them a laundry list of community building activities. We asked about them. Those that had 4 or more did 10% more treasure, 12% more volunteer time. I can't explain the 0% spirituality. That makes no sense to me, but that's what we found. Like welcoming, if you're not building community, don't bother with stewardship. It's not going to work. If there is a lack of a sense of community in your parish, if you have factions like the school against the religious education, it's a popular one, work on that before you start with stewardship. It's not going to work. It's one of those preconditions. But again, this is an unintentional stewardship activity. You should be building community anyway, doing it anyway, and doing it all the time. Because people give to people. Beep. Question 12. Anybody got a perfect score going so far? Who's at risk of being shipped off to Philadelphia for a week? Nobody would admit it, would you? Okay. Question 12. Which of the following parish communications tools is most effective at building parish stewardship? Bulletin, newsletter, or the website? Beep. Bulletin doesn't work. Okay. Why not? Well, first of all, how would you communicate stewardship? You would talk about what stewardship is and what it isn't. It isn't about fundraising. It isn't about raising money. It's about changing minds and hearts. It's about developing a need to give. You want to get that message across. It's hard to get that message across in the short space you have in a bulletin. You might also use your communication tools to tell about good stewards in your parish. Show examples of folks who are living a good stewardship life and tell their story. You can't do that in a bulletin. Plus, the bulletin only hits those who are Mass that Sunday. So it's really not a very effective tool, but I'm not saying don't use it. What I'm saying is don't rely solely on your bulletin. If your only means of communicating with your parishioners is through the bulletin on stewardship, you need more. Okay? Newsletter. Newsletter gets sent out to every household in the parish, or hits folks whether they attend Mass or not. Gives you more space to talk about stewardship, to explain what it is and what it isn't. And to give a good story about somebody who's living a good stewardship life. Website. If I was doing this study today, I would just say social media. I think that's really an untapped resource for most of us, but we can use social media to tell about stewardship as well, website included. Okay? But it's important that we communicate with our parishioners about what stewardship is and what it isn't. Beep. Again, we gave them a laundry list, 5 or more communications tools, increased all 3 components by a significant amount. You've got to communicate with your parishioners about stewardship. Beep. Okay, conclusion. What are the 10 things you should be doing to advance stewardship in your parish? Number 1, beep. Be a welcoming parish that takes community building seriously. That's first and foremost. Before you do anything else, make sure that's in place. Because if that's not in place, like I said, you're wasting your time. You want to make sure that you're a place where people want to be, because people give to people. Appoint a stewardship council. Again, my recommendation is make it a separate council, separate at the level of pastoral and finance council. Beep. Include stewardship as a vital component of the parish plan. Permeate the entire parish by making sure as part of the plan that every ministry understands their role in promoting stewardship in your parish. Beep. Emphasize stewardship in all parish formation and education programs. I didn't talk about this one today, but our studies show you should have stewardship as part of the curriculum in the parochial school. Talk about the curriculum of the religious education. If you have adult programs, talk about stewardship once in a while. It should be part of all the education and formation programs in your parish. Beep. Minimize your use of volunteers. What could I possibly mean by that? Well, a few years ago, I went to visit another priest who had a real good reputation as a stewardship priest. I'd never met the guy before, so I didn't want to talk about money at first, so I said, "Gee, Father, tell me, how many volunteers do you have in this parish?" He said, "None." You know how your mind races? My mind races. Wow, you poor, pathetic, incompetent priest, you. You couldn't get one person to volunteer in this parish? Then he went on and said, "No, we don't have volunteers. We have folks engaged in a ministry." I said, "A ministry? What's the difference?" He said, "Well, what's the connotation of a volunteer? If I show up on time, it's okay. If I don't show up on time, it's okay too. I'm only a volunteer. If I do a good job, it's okay. If I don't do a good job, it's okay too. I'm only a volunteer." But when folks think they're involved in a ministry, they'll take it more seriously because they know the parish relies on them. They know that through their baptism, they're living out their baptismal call of this ministry. So, for example, if you're a lector, that's not a volunteer activity. That's a ministry. We rely on you to be there and do a good job. If you're an extraordinary minister of the Eucharist, that's not a volunteer activity. That's a ministry. Your parishioners rely on you to be there and do a good job. If you teach religious education, that's a ministry. We rely on you. And when folks think that they're being relied on, they do a better job. Father Tom Sweetser, a famous parish consultant, found that when folks take on the mindset of a ministry, when they view what they're doing as a ministry, their financial contributions double. If they're giving $10 a week, they start giving 20. Okay? Now, of course, that puts some pressure on the parish house then. Because if we want folks to be engaged in a ministry, not a volunteer activity, we have to, first of all, train them. We have to support them. We have to hold them accountable. Volunteers have very low expectations for any training they're going to receive. They have very low expectations for any support they're going to receive, and they sure don't expect to be held accountable. But if we're going to be in ministry, we have to train them, support them, and hold them accountable. I'm often asked, could you fire a volunteer in the parish? Yeah, absolutely. Fire is a tough term. Would you help them find a better ministry? If someone's not working out one ministry, you approach them and say, geez, George, there's this other ministry over here that could really use some of your talents. Why don't you try this other ministry? Kind of soften, cushion the blow. But if someone's not working out, you owe it to your parishioners to move that person to another ministry where they will work out. Okay? Again, firing is a strong term, but you have to do something. Now, not all folks are going to be ministry right away. Most folks start off with a volunteer mentality. It's our job to help move them along to the mentality of someone involved in a ministry. Beep. Provide opportunity for lay witness presentations. As I said, mix and match your lay witnesses. Have folks from all varieties, including some guest lay witnesses. Beep. Encourage parishioners to make a commitment to the parish by pledging. That's really important. Again, I highly encourage electronic giving as a way of doing that. Beep. Communicate with parishioners on stewardship. Talk about what stewardship is, what it isn't. Tell them stories about good stewards in your parish. Model good stewardship for them through that means. Beep. And also model good stewardship through the activity of the parish house. Make sure that the parish house is good stewards. The parish leadership are good stewards of parish resources, including being accountable and transparent in all finances. Beep. Remind parishioners that contributing through estate planning is good stewardship. This was not part of my study. This was given to me by a forum like this, where folks say, well, gee, Chuck, what about folks who retire? What about that? That's a good point. Going back to Father Gurr's presentation about fear, I'm fearful. I have to admit, Father, I'm one of those fearful folks. I'm 66 years old, and right now I'm socking away everything I can for retirement because I have no idea how much I'm going to need or how much my wife is going to need maybe eventually. So as a result, I'm not as good a steward of the parish as I should be. I don't give as much as I could. But hopefully someday when both my wife and I have passed on, there'll be some money left over. What a great time to make up for my lack of good stewardship now. What a great time by remembering my church and my will. Estate planning. This is another area in which Protestants far outpace Catholics. Now, I know a lot of dioceses have offices for this to help people with their estate planning, and in the process help them set some money aside for the church. Okay, if your diocese doesn't do that, I think there's something that's worthwhile. Beep. Remember, though, stewardship is first and foremost a spiritual activity. If you incorporate stewardship in your parish and you raise all kinds of money, but your parish isn't a more spiritual place, you failed. Okay? Start with the spirituality, the rest will follow. Thank you.